is that Philip II will go conquer Greece. Because remember, at this time, Greece are divided into city-states. They're all fighting each other. And they're not interested in actually conquering each other. They're just interested in maintaining equilibrium. So Philip II is like, you know what, screw the system. I'm going to come, break all the rules, and I'm going to conquer everyone. So this is the Battle of Chaeronea, which is where he defeats a combined force of the Thebans and Athenians, and now he controls all of mainland Greece. And now he's ready to do what he really wants, which is to conquer Persia. Why? Because Persia is where the money is, right? Greece is poor. Persia is wealthy. Therefore, I'm going to take this army and go conquer Persia. So this is the year 336 when Philip II has conquered all of mainland Greece and he's now ready to invade Persia. In fact, he has also spies throughout Persia. He also has diplomats throughout Persia negotiating with the local elites. Okay, so he's now ready to go and conquer Persia. Unfortunately, he gets killed. Okay. So he goes to the wedding of his daughter, and his bodyguard kills him. And there's historical debate as to who killed this, but the answer is pretty simple, okay? His wife, Olympias. Why would Olympias, who is the mother of Alexander the Great, kill her husband? It's really, really simple. If you're a king, you marry a lot of foreign women for alliances. Olympias is not Macedonian. And so there's a lot of people in the Macedonian court who dislike her. Alexander the Great is heir to the throne, but as a young man, he was notorious for being a thug. Okay, he's not like Philip II. Philip II is very deliberate. He's very strategic. Alexander the Great is basically a thug. So Philip II was worried about Alexander the Great. So later in his life, he married a Macedonian woman, and they had a son together. Okay, what this means now is that this son is now heir to the throne and not Alexander the Great. Olympias taught Alexander the Great from day one that you are special, Alexander. You are not the son of Philip II. You're the son of God. Son of God, okay? And so Olympias, when she felt that Philip II was about to steal the throne from Alexander, she had him killed. And we know because after Philip II was killed, who else did she kill? The wife, the new Macedonian wife, as well as the son, right? Okay. So this is a nasty person. Alexander the Great will take Philip's great army and he will go conquer Persia with it. Okay? And this is what his conquest path looks like. He will do this in like 10 years' time. He'll conquer like the entire world basically in 10 years' time. What's important is the way that he moves, okay? He moves really quickly with a small army, which tells us that he needed cooperation from local elites, okay? Remember, at this time in history, Persia has reached an equilibrium. It's stagnant. There's no innovation going on. There's a lot of competition between the upper nobility and the lower nobility, okay? So the lower nobility part was probably helping Alexander conquer Persia. Two things I want to keep you to understand about this map. First of all is like the moment that Alexander reaches Persia, he goes to Troy. Why does he go to Troy? Because Achilles went to Troy. So Alexander saw himself as the new Achilles, okay? And in fact, he had memorized the Iliad, and he took the Iliad with him wherever he went, okay? So that's the first thing I want you to appreciate. Also, what he did during the war was he took one of his enemies, tied his enemy to the back of his chariot, and rolled the guy around, okay? Just like Achilles did to Hector. The other thing that's really important, even more important, is that you see what happened when he visits Egypt, okay? He conquers Egypt, and then he decides to go all the way over here to Ammon, okay? Why does he do that? Because there's an oracle at Ammon, and he spent a few days with this oracle, and this oracle told him his secret. The secret is this. You are not the son of Philip II. You're the son of God, who is Zeus-Ammon, okay? So Zeus is the king of the gods in the Greek tradition. Ammon is king of the gods in the Egyptian tradition. So in other words, Alexander was born to rule the world. He was destined to conquer the world. And this explains why when he conquered most of Persia and Darius said to him, you know what, here's $1 billion, go away. Alexander's like, no, screw you, I want all of this, okay? Not only that, but even after he conquered Persepolis, which is the capital of the Persian Empire, he kept on going to India. Okay? The only reason why he stopped is his soldiers got sick of fighting. The other thing about Alexander that's really important is he was known for his atrocities. So he burned down the city of Thebes, and he burned down the city of Persepolis. Why would he do that? Well, if you understood that he saw himself as son of God, then it's possible, we'll never know, okay? It's possible that burning down Thebes and burning down Persepolis were ritual sacrifices necessary to prove that he was a son of God, okay? So, yeah, he did a lot of bad things, but there's really nothing random about what he did. The things he did were for diplomatic, military purposes, okay? All right. So this is a map of his conquests. Okay. This is the burning of Persepolis. You can actually still visit Persepolis today in Iran. Okay. What he was doing while his conquest was that he was slowly killing off his father's most loyal men. So Parmenion, who was Philip II's top general, Alexander killed. And then Clitus, who was also not top general, he killed as well, okay? Now, historically, we remember these events as random acts of violence, but they're not, okay? Alexander slowly needed to kill off his father's men so that he could create his own empire, okay? And so what happened was that eventually the other generals were like, eventually Alexander's going to kill us as well. So they conspired and poisoned him. And now what they will do is they will fight amongst themselves and create the Greek world, okay? It's divided into 4 major parts. And the 4 major parts are Ptolemy takes Egypt, which is the wealthiest part of the empire. Then you have Macedon, then you have Anatolia, and then you have the Seleucid Empire, okay? All right? So the problem, though, is like once you conquer most of the world, you have to rule over the world. And there aren't that many Greeks. So what they will do is they will build Greek cities to settle their veterans and invite more Greeks to come help them govern the empire. But they also need to recruit bureaucrats, okay? So they recruit these Persian bureaucrats because they're very effective, but they also recruit Jews as well into the empire, okay? Because Jews are a foreign people. Okay? Because remember, because these people, the Greeks, need to control and manage their empire. Okay? All right. So what I want you to focus now is on Egypt. Okay? Because historically, Egypt was the center of the world. It was the cultural capital of the world, and Egypt helped give science and math to Greece. Okay? Now the Greeks are like controlling Egypt, and the Egyptians are like, wait a minute here. You guys were barbarians. Now you're controlling us? Why is this happening? So now the Greeks need to explain what's happening. And so what they do is they create cultural imperialism. All right? Okay. This is the Greek world. So they're building Greek cities all around the world. And these cities are very similar. There's an amphitheater. Sorry, this is a better map, okay? This is Pergamon, okay? So you can see what it looks like. You have an amphitheater, which is where they stage Greek theater. You have a gymnasium. You have an agora. Like if you go to these cities, they're all very similar to each other. Okay, and this is Greek art, which takes over the world as well. All right, this is Ptolemy II. And he and his father, Ptolemy I, they will create something called the Library of Alexandria. Okay? The Library of Alexandria, what it will do is it will take all the Greek knowledge in the world and it will systemize it and standardize it as textbooks to be taught throughout the world. Okay? So this is really a university. To show you how wealthy the Egyptians are, when they built the Library of Alexandria, they needed original manuscripts. And so they said to the Athenians, hey, can we borrow some original plays? And the Greeks are like, no, you can't, because we really love our Euripides and our Achilles and Sophocles. You can't just take this stuff. This stuff is priceless. And the Egyptians said, you know what we'll do? We'll give you like $1 billion as a deposit. And the Athenians, well, that's a lot of money. Oh, sure, okay. All right, so the Athenians lend these scrolls to the Egyptians in Alexandria to copy. And then after some time, the Athenians said to Ptolemy, hey man, give us back the scrolls. And then Ptolemy's like, keep the money. That's how wealthy they were. They had all the money in the world. They didn't care. Keep the money. $10 million, keep the money, man. And the Athenians were pissed, okay? They were really, really pissed about this. Don't ever trust. Yeah. Anyway, this is the Library of Alexandria. It's part of something called the Museon, okay? So what's really important for us to understand is that a university is not really about education. It's not really about literacy, culture. It's really about a tool of empire to create a cultural understanding of the world that allows the empire to rule over people. Okay? So the Library the Library of Alexandria is an example of this because remember, the Greeks are ruling over the Egyptians. And the Egyptians are like, why are you ruling over us? And the Greeks are like, because we're culturally superior to you. And how do you prove it? By censoring Egyptian culture, okay? By downplaying Egyptian culture and by upplaying, by promoting Greek culture, okay? This is cultural imperialism. Now, this is really important. As part of the cultural imperialist project, the Egyptians, under Ptolemy, they also started to work with the Jews. Okay? Why? Because Egypt needed to control the Levant as well. Okay? Who's in the Levant? The Jews. The Jews are problematic because they were loyal to the Persian Empire. Okay? So how do you make them loyal to you? Well, you bribe them. How do you bribe them? By getting their priests, by saying to the priests, you know what? We love your tradition, we love your culture. Let us translate your Bible into Greek so that we can celebrate your Bible and spread it around the world. And this is what we call the Septuagint. The Septuagint, okay? It's really important in our history. And so the Jews were like, yeah, that's a great thing. But not only that, but because of the Library of Alexandria, a lot of Jews were going to Alexandria to help contribute to the scholarship there, okay? So eventually, a third of the people of Alexandria will become Jews, okay? But Jews are spreading throughout the Greek world. And so now what you're seeing is a massive syncretism between all three major religions, okay? The Greeks, the Jews, and the Persians. Because the Persians are administrators in this empire, the Greeks are ruling this empire, and the Jews are helping build this empire, okay? So this will merge all three major worldviews, and this will give us Christianity.